Народно-освободительное движение Союза Советских Социалистических Республик.
The Soviet of Ministers of the USSR, State Committee on the State of Emergency. Date, October the 12th, 2023. By right of the Sovereign, Decree. Great Sovereign Country, Union of Soviet Socialist Republics, represented by the State Committee for the State of Emergency, USSR, SCSE of the USSR, as the supreme body of state power of the Union of Soviet Socialist Republics, on the basis of wartime laws, expresses its respect to all great, united, sovereign Soviet people, all subjects of law and the entire world community. In pursuance of the resolutions of the Sovereign International Treasury Monetary One, Decree number 27 of January 27, 2023, Decree number 35 of January 29, 2023, Decree number 39, dated August 21, 2023, and other sovereign international and subordinate acts of the Sovereign International Treasury Monetary One and norms of international law, based on the performance by the Sovereign International Treasury Monetary One of the functions of State Treasury of the USSR. Resolution of the Supreme National Assembly of the USSR number 81-6, dated October 7, 2018. Based on the resolutions of the State Committee for the State of Emergency of the USSR, SUR-1, dated 13th of March 2023, SUR-3, dated on the 21st of March 2023, SUR-5, dated on the 5th of March 2023, DN-9, dated on 20th of July 2023, DN-10, dated on 8th of April 2023. In connection with the numerous monstrous crimes in the field of the law of the sovereign, namely in relation to the great sovereign country, the Union of Soviet Socialist Republics, legislation of the USSR, and its great, multinational, united, sovereign Soviet people, in connection with the occupation of the sovereign territory of the USSR, genocide, oppression and robbery of the multinational sovereign people through extremism, terrorism, poverty, hunger, the introduction of GMOs, sacrifices, slave trade, murder for the sale of organs on the basis of Article 121, paragraphs 15-16 of the Constitution of the USSR, Paragraph 1, Resolution of the First Congress of Citizens of the Soviet Union No. 1, dated December 30, 1991, Paragraph 8 of the Mandate of Trust No. 1, dated December 30, 1991, on the basis of the Presidium of the Military People's Council as the Defense Council of the USSR Resolution of the Civil Code of the USSR No. 36, VPM, dated January 13, 2020 year, on the declaration of martial law throughout the entire sovereign territory of the Union of Soviet Socialist Republics due to non-compliance with the divine law of creation, hereby proclaims, in the name of the great sovereign country, the Union of Soviet Socialist Republics, according to the laws of wartime, for violation and non-execution of Soviet legislation of recognition of the legislation of the USSR as invalid, not enforced, not applied, or no longer enforced in the criminal trade enterprise Russian Federation, Russia, currently the State Cooperative Enterprise Russian Federation, Russia, for using unjust sentences, criminal resolutions, rulings of courts and prosecutors, illegal detentions, thefts, economic crimes for criminal actions or inactions of police officers, police, other federal executive bodies and services, for the activities of the monetary authorities of the criminal trading company of the Russian Federation, Russia, and now the State Cooperative Enterprise of Russian Federation, Russia, for misleading the sovereign citizens of the USSR, for recognizing the sovereign citizens of the USSR as an individual and not as a person, man or woman, for harm and damage caused to the interests, property and non-property rights of sovereign citizens, public good and benefit, for the issuance, circulation and use of obviously invalid and void certificate of birth of a trading company of the Russian Federation, Russia, and now the State Cooperative Enterprise, issuance of void and invalid passports of the Russian Federation, Russia, issuance and circulation of using certificates of registration of civil status acts as a form of hybrid genocide of the Soviet people, for belittling the rights and dignity, titles and interests of the USSR and Soviet citizens, their children and descendants throughout the sovereign territory of the great sovereign country, the Union of Soviet Socialist Republics, for sovereign citizens of the USSR who participated in scientific experiments and medical experiments in the form of deadly vaccines, regardless of the presence or absence of voluntary consent as a form of genocide with the assignment of code to sovereign citizens of the USSR, for massive introduction of 5G antennas as a weapon of mass destruction and genocide of the great sovereign people, dangerous not only for people but also the entire ecosystem of our planet. For the sale in a retail chain of food products with genetically modified organisms, which contain substances and components prohibited for use by humans and animals, dangerous and potentially dangerous agents, and substances, recognized toxic substances and chemical elements, fatal preparations, viruses, and GMOs, organisms that modify the human genome as well as the implants for remote digital control and computer control. For open and direct actions of derogation and international insult of Soviet statehood throughout the sovereign territory of the great sovereign country, the Union of Soviet Socialist Republics, substitution of state symbols, the coat of arms, anthem, and flag of the USSR with false illegitimate attributes of the country. For the publication, reliability, coverage, promulgation, publication, and expression of one's own of their opinion, belief, search, choice, recipe, dissemination of information and ideas affecting sovereignty, defense, capability, security, sovereign interests and legitimate rights, morality, titles and dignity of sovereign citizens of the USSR and Soviet men. For the dissemination of false and unreliable information about the liquidation of the Soviet state of the great sovereign country, the Union of Soviet Socialist Republics, nation of the former USSR and former citizens of the USSR, as for committed state and war crimes under the USSR law number 14031, dated December 25, 1958, as amended on April 2, 1990, on criminal liability for state crimes and the USSR law dated December 25, 1958, as amended on December 15, 1983, on criminal liability for military crimes, for attempt and attempted premeditated murder and attempt to judge, establish, and assert civil deaths according to Roman laws, for recognizing a live-born child as a stillborn, inferior, sick, beggar, and slave. All guilty acting officials, including senior officials holding positions in the State Cooperative Enterprise, Russian Federation, Russia, involved of the free will and directly involved in the open and direct genocide of the Soviet sovereign people, under investigation and accused by the special composition meetings of the special presence of the Military Tribunal of the Supreme Court of the USSR, which are subject to application of capital punishment as guilty state and war criminals under the emergency legislation of the USSR and wartime, the death penalty. In relation to the acting duties of the supreme pseudo-officials temporarily carrying out their activities as state bodies in the State Cooperative Enterprise, Russian Federation, Russia, as well as courts, the prosecutor's office, the bar and the notary office, holding a state diploma of higher legal education. The press and the media, a special counterintelligence regime has been established and is in effect, and special criminal liability has been established in the Military Tribunal of the USSR under the wartime legislation of the USSR. The highest state, central authorities, Republican, federal and local authorities, and management of the RSFSR as the USSR for a special period of martial law as the USSR come under the jurisdiction of the Military Field Civil Administration under the leadership of State Committee for the State of Emergency of the Union of Soviet Socialist Republics as a supreme body of state power of the great sovereign country, the Union of Soviet Socialist Republics, and the extraordinary constitutional commissions and committees of the USSR are not subject to, prohibited and excluded from occupying and holding positions by Russian, foreign citizens, persons with dual citizenship, and stateless persons. The representation of the Council of Ministers of the USSR is the State Committee for the State of Emergency of the Union of Soviet Socialist Republics as a supreme body of state power of the great sovereign country, the Union of Soviet Socialist Republics, and the falsified government of Russia, headed by M.V. Mishustin, doesn't have the rights and titles to represent itself and enter into the system of federal executive bodies of the State Cooperative Enterprise, Russian Federation, Russia, and is subject to liquidation, abolition, and termination of its existence in favor of the Soviet legislative government. The position of Secretary of the Security Council of Russia, which is occupied by N.P. Petrushev, as the successor to the activities of the Secretary of the Constitutional Court of the USSR, is being eliminated. The functions of the chairman of the court and judges are performed by the extraordinary commissions and commissions under the State Committee for the State of Emergency of the Union of Soviet Socialist Republics. Thus, without exceptions and reservations, according to the Soviet sovereign law of the Holy War and wartime, all without exception, the persons above mentioned in these resolutions rule the sovereign territory of the great sovereign country, the Union of Soviet Socialist Republics, as separatists, extremists, international terrorists, caught in the act, saboteurs and bandits, destroyed or subject to destruction by all available means and forces, as in the commission of a terrorist act and the sabotage against the Soviet citizens and Soviet men, or is recognized as execution of the sovereign verdict on the basis of this decree in relation to a person declared outside the law as a citizens or citizens who brought the sovereign. If the sentence is executed, they are released from criminal liability. This decree has the status of an absolute sovereign legal legislative act and is subject to full mandatory execution throughout the entire sovereign territory of the great sovereign country, the Union of Soviet Socialist Republics, in accordance with the law of the sovereign legislation of the USSR, and international rules of law. If any subject of law and any subject of this decree of the State Committee of the State of Emergency of the USSR, as the supreme body of the state power of the great sovereign country, the Union of Soviet Socialist Republics, ignores this subject of law is recognized as criminal, belongs to the category of separatists, extremists, and international terrorists. This decree comes into force from the moment of its signing. Chairman of the State Emergency Committee of the USSR, Army General B. Satushev. Commissar of the State Emergency Committee, Lieutenant General A. Chernomorov. Secretariat of the State Emergency Committee of the USSR, Major General Irina Gorbacheva.
Народно-освободительное движение Союза Советских Социалистических Республик.